Welcome to the breakdown where we break down the concept of mental health so we'll all understand it a little better. I'm your host, Michelle Lacey, and today we'll be discussing mental health. What is it and how does it affect us? So, mental health is defined as an important part of our overall health and well being, and that includes our emotional, psychological, and social well being. And it plays a huge role in determining how we relate to others or how we handle stress, how well we handle stress, and how we make, our everyday decisions. And it's just as important as physical health because you can look at somebody and tell when they're hurt physically. You can look at them and tell, that they're sick or something, but you can never know what's going on inside a person's head. You never know if they're dealing with an anxiety disorder or depression or, something worse. You never know that. And I guess because of the fact that you can't really see a person's mental health status is the reason why a lot of people don't really understand it. But that's okay because that's what this podcast is about. So let's get into it. Anxiety disorders are the most common mental illness in the United States, affecting about 18.1% of the population every year. That's about 40 million people ages 18 and up. And even though these disorders are treatable, they're highly treatable. Only about 36.9% of that 40 million people receive treatment. And compared to people who don't suffer from anxiety disorders, the people who do are 3 to 5 times more likely to go to the doctor and 6 times more likely to be hospitalized for psychiatric disorders. Anxiety disorders can be developed from, a number of things, including genetics, brain chemistry, your personality, or, traumatic life events. And usually, when somebody suffers from anxiety, they also suffer from depression as well, or it could be the other way around, or they could just simply deal with one or the other. Some anxiety disorders are general anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and social anxiety disorder, but it does not stop there. I could seriously go on. Um, and everybody experiences stress and anxiety at some point in their life. But I just find it so amazing how we all handle that differently. Like, we could be faced with the same problem and still react to it differently. And I just find that so amazing. Um, but I could continue to sit here and give you the facts. I could give you mental health for what it's defined as and do what everybody else does to get you aware of mental health. But I want to take a different route here. And I want to give you a glimpse from my perspective of what it's like to deal with, an anxiety disorder. So imagine yourself sitting in your room and your TV is on, but you can't really focus on what's going on the TV because your mind is going 90 miles per hour. There are so many thoughts swirling around in your head so fast that you can't even grasp one of them to just, see what's going on with you. And you have this eerie feeling of inevitable doom, and you can't shake it no matter how hard you try. And while you're trying to focus on calming your mind and relaxing, you notice that your breathing becomes irregular. Now you're hyperventilating, and your chest feels like it's getting tighter and tighter. It's getting so tight that it's hurting at this point. And the more you try to breathe, the harder it becomes for you. You can't really wrap your head around what's going on because days or maybe even weeks before this, you sat in your room, the same room, and had no problem. But now, the same four walls that brought you comfort, that brought you peace, they were closing in on you and they were suffocating you. Whatever you know of the outside world, it ceases to exist. Reality as you know it has shattered before you, right before your eyes. And it's like darkness is setting in around you and it's stripping you of every ounce of joy that you might have had. and it's leaving behind nothing but an empty, hollow shell. You're now lost in this dark pit of despair and no one can find you. You can't even find yourself. I just described to you my very first panic attack back in June of 2020. And at the time, I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. I just thought that I was going to die right there in my room. But luckily, I picked up the phone and I called my mom, and she was just making it home from work. And by the time she made it to me with my uncle, I was trembling. I had like cold sweats, and I was really just on the verge of passing out. I remember them taking me outside, and that cool air that hit my face and like the fresh air that I was getting, it was all so refreshing. It was like unusually refreshing. Like it was my first time experiencing it. And I remember my mom telling me, slow deep breaths, slow your breathing down. And that is something that has resonated with me from then on, because now when I feel a panic attack coming on, I know, slow deep breaths, control your breathing so that I don't start hyperventilating and it gets out of control like that. Um now I've had a history with anxiety and depression before, but it was never this bad. I was even on medication for it. And I stopped the medication because I started to feel better. And I didn't know that at the time. You can't just stop taking medicine like that. You can't stop cold turkey because it'll get worse. And that's exactly what it did. It got worse. I was in a place that was so dark for so long, and I didn't understand what was happening to me. I would beat myself up because I couldn't get out of bed. It wasn't that I didn't want to, I just couldn't. I had no motivation. I had no willpower, no anything. I just wanted to lay in bed and waste away. I had no energy, nothing. And from the outside, it might have looked like I was just being lazy and didn't want to do anything, but that was not the case. And that just made things so much worse for me. But I finally decided to go to the doctor, and it wasn't hard to open up to her and tell her what was going on because she'd been my pediatric nurse when I was a baby, and now she's my doctor, Dr. Shirley Cartinez of Maine, Louisiana Urgent Care. Um, she really helped me to, get back on track and take control of this thing. She really reminded me that, you know, you can have anxiety, but you don't have to let it control you. You can take control of it. And so I started to get better. I started to see the light through all that darkness. And just by looking at me, you wouldn't be able to tell that I've been through any of that, or listening to me. You wouldn't be able to tell that I've experienced any of that. And it's an everyday battle. Some days are better than the others, and some are worse. And sometimes I just have to, try to put it all on pause and just catch my breath. And you wouldn't believe how many other people deal with this same thing, but they're afraid to speak up about it because, on top of already feeling like they're losing their minds, they're hearing you're crazy. They're hearing, you're too sensitive. They're hearing you're overreacting. And that's all because people don't really understand the severity of an unhealthy mental space. And that's why I wanted to create this podcast, so that those who are suffering from these disorders, that they'll know that they're never alone. They're never alone in this fight. And those who don't understand, I'm hoping to give you a little insight on, what that's like for us. But that's all for today. So please stay tuned for more, and thanks for listening.